As Steve had mentioned, I was wearing my mask, which someone went to a great deal of trouble to make sure that I had this beautiful mask. And Steve has one that happens to be crimson and cream. And, and because of that, they gave me the OSU Cowboys and him the OU mask. And we made a deal that, whenever next week comes around, if the Sooners win, then he'll be wearing the Sooners one, and I'll be, if the Cowboys win, I'll wear the Cowboys mask. And but someone, they really went to a lot of trouble to make sure I had this, and I just didn't want them to be disappointed because I won't be wearing it next week, and so I decided I would wear it this week, to make sure that they got their enjoyment out of me actually wearing it, right? Oh, the fun we have, right? Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew, beginning the 25th chapter at the 14th verse. Listen for God's word for you. For it is if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went out at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter in the joy of your master. And the one who had 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. And his master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter in the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid the talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master replied to him, You wicked and lazy slave, you knew that I did not, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Many years ago, I'd heard a story, and I'd not thought about it until I ran across it a few weeks ago. And the story, as I had read it, was a woman had gone into Walmart, and she had done her shopping and had a cart full of groceries and other things she was bringing out. And she came to her car, and when she got to her car, there were 4 men sitting in the car. And, being like a lot of folks who around here, she had a concealed carry license, and she pulled her gun out of her purse. And she told them to get out of her car. And the men were shocked. They got out of the car. They ran off as quick as they could. And she kind of shaken, from the whole experience. Most of us never have to deal with anything like that. And so she loaded up her groceries and things she'd purchased into the car. And she got into the car. And no matter how she tried, she could not get the key to go into the ignition. And she began looking around and realized, actually, this was a car that looked very similar to hers, but it was not her car. And she looked, and hers was about 4 place is over. And very embarrassed, she put all the things into her car, and still shaken, she decided she should go to the police station. And she drove to the police station to turn herself in. And the officer who was taking, there at the desk, she comes in and tells what had happened, what she had done and how she had made this mistake. And he just begins laughing and laughing and laughing as he pointed over to the four men who were at the other end of the room who had come in to complain about the white-haired lady, 5 foot tall, who had carjacked them. Now, we've all probably had some similar experience, a vehicle that looks similar to ours. And, in fact, the other day, I just walked right past my car, and thinking I'd parked someplace else, and then, was a little lost as I tried to figure out where mine was. We all have that experience. It's a bit disorienting. The thing is that it was not her car. And that's the mistake she made. Now, all was forgiven. No charges were pressed or anything. It was a mistake. It wasn't her car. But we all, in some ways, kind of make a similar mistake in our lives. We think that what we have in our lives is ours. That wasn't her car. Her own car really was not her own. All the cars in the parking lot were all owned by the same person. That's the Lord. All of creation, everything that is, was provided to us from the Lord. There's nothing we have that is truly ours. It's something we have for a while, but has been entrusted to us. We are, if you will, managers of what the Lord has provided in our life. We may feel like, I earned those things. I worked hard to be able to have those, but God provided everything else for us that we have. None of us really are a person on our own. We all are dependent upon what the Lord has done for us, and the Lord has provided in our lives. We are like managers, and the Lord is the one who is the owner of everything. I was thinking about this. Maybe the best analogy I can think of is my retirement account. Since I was 24, became a pastor, ordained, and monthly, I've made a deposit into that retirement account. I didn't pay attention to it for a long, long time. Now I get more and more interested in it, as I can begin to see a day whenever I might retire and I will need it. And I have entrusted it to the good folks at our Board of Pensions office who have managed it well. It is done well. But there's going to be a time when I will need it. And if they treat it as if it's theirs, maybe they want to go buy a boat for the summer, for their family. They use that money of mine to go do it. I'll not be real happy when it comes time for retirement and withdrawing it. There's a sense in which maybe it's the closest analogy we can understand, that we park something, we set it aside for a day when it will be needed, and there will be a time when we will call upon it to be there. And the Lord, in the same way, entrusts to us what we have in our lives to be able to enjoy, to share, to love, and to have in our lives, and then to be able to give in return back to the Lord, to others who are in need. It's an important part of how we understand our role in life as managers. And we want to be good stewards of what God has provided to us. It's been a growing place in my spiritual understanding. Angie and I have always given from what the Lord had provided through the ministry of the church. It's been an important part. When we were beginning in ministry, we had not tithed, we had not given 10%. So it took us a couple of years to move from where we were, and we made a real deliberate plan to increase our giving each year on a percentage basis till we got to that place. It's important that we approach such things with a plan about how we give back to the Lord from what God has given to us. And I've always understood that. But understanding that my life is not my own, that's a bigger deal. To understand that you are not mine, we are not each other's, is something that has dawned on me more and more with time. It's maybe wisdom, maybe we can't know everything, but as I mature in my faith, and I think about the people that been a part of our lives, and the phrase that comes from our liturgy in the funeral, that before this person was ours, they were yours, Lord. And now we give them back to you. In thinking about the time when they pass, the person that we've had the privilege to share life with feels like they're ours, but they're not. They're the Lord's. We are the Lord's. That lesson that we talked about a few weeks ago, where it said to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God's. Even Caesar is God's. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Even Caesar has to account for his life to God. We all are God's. That's apostrophe S, by the way. We are all God's children. We belong ultimately to him. We are even not our own. And the people in our lives are entrusted to us, and we get to celebrate life with them and love and enjoy and laugh and to be present with each other. But ultimately, they're not ours either. They're the Lord's, and we return them to the Lord. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about when you marry and the vows that you say to have and to hold. We have them, a spouse for a while. We hold them, but ultimately they are entrusted to us in the care of God, and they are God's. And we return them to the Lord, or they return us to the Lord when that time comes, because ultimately we're not our own and we are not each other's. We are the Lord's. That means we are each other's, but just in a shared way, not to that phrase have. We don't possess, but we get to hold, to be with each other. I think it's a deep spiritual understanding that the Lord teaches us that life is not all about us and what we have, that ultimately we are the Lord's and we rest in the Lord. And the practice of giving in the life of the church, in ways that we give beyond the church, is a practice of knowing that we don't put ourselves at the center, but God is at the center, and it reminds us of that on a regular basis. Giving is a way that we remember that. There are all kinds of ways that giving's important. Giving's important because the ministry of the church. We do amazing things through our apportionment giving that affects the world round. Missions that go all around the world in terms of sharing the gospel with people who don't know Christ, but also in very practical ways of dealing with teaching people how to grow crops. There's a farm in Kenya where they, just on weekends, they invite farmers from the surrounding area to come, and they teach people how to grow crops. It's sponsored by the United Methodist Church. It's paid for by the United Methodist Church, and it affects people's lives all over. A friend of mine, Stanley Katari, he was here a few years ago from Kenya. He now has a eucalyptus I don't know if you call it forest, arbor that he grows and collects. And it provides, in addition to his work at the hospital in Maua, at Maua Methodist Hospital, it provides for him an income for his family in addition to the work at the hospital. Stanley does that. It's an amazing thing, the way that we get to support mission and ministry through the work of the church, through the Samaritan Fund that you all support. People come by here almost every day, it seems like, several times a week, needing help with utilities. And we provide a good bit of help. It's $50. Someone comes in with a bill, maybe $150 that they can't pay at the time. The truth is, most people can come up with part of it, whether they have some funds or someone they know can help them. Usually what happens is, in partnership with Salvation Army or another church, if they're willing to get their part of it together, another church contribute a part of it, we do $50, and we're able to help them to keep that utility service going. And we do that. There are times when we do more than that. Sometimes there are needs that come in that just seem absolutely overwhelming, and we find ways to do more than that. But provide help. There are folks who come by every Wednesday. They don't come every Wednesday. Different people come on Wednesdays to get vouchers to go to the food pantry and to have food provided that they can take home to prepare. It's an important ministry. There are folks in our church who are part of mobile meals and delivering meals to folks. It's a part of their service and care. We have 2 teams that prepare meals for the soup kitchen. And as I understand it, we're having over 250 people come in on a regular basis for that. People who are providing that. Some of the people who do the cooking donate the food that they're preparing. Some of the food is purchased through the church, through the Samaritan Fund. There's a number of ways that that's supported. Our daycare makes a huge difference in the lives of kids in this community. And that's an investment that goes for years and years and years in the life of this community. Those kids who are here, half of them, their parents pay cash to be here. The other half are on DHS support. And that ministry of the daycare is supported by about $40,000 underwritten out of support from the life of the church. That comes in utilities that we pay in our church budget, insurance that's paid for the program, just a variety of things, staff support to help oversee and to keep the ministry of the daycare going. It's an investment, it's a ministry, and it's supported. Only way it can happen is through the support of the budget in our local church. It's important work that we do together. Money that goes to Circle and Care and to TEAM Ministries, the Education and Employment Ministries, where folks in Oklahoma City at TEAM, they come in and they go through training for job training. They're taught skills about how to use computers and how to type and just all different kinds of basic skills that people are in need of. They're taught how to do an interview for a job, how to manage money and finances, all those things that are done. They prepare them through the class. They get them clothes to be able to suitable for going to work in a setting, and then they help line up job interviews for them so that they can move from a place of needing employment and dependence to a place where they're working and become self-sufficient. Those are ministries that are supported through the life of our church, in some ways through people who were very generous to leave mineral rights to the church, and we get to manage and steward them. And as those funds come in, we send them on to be able to support Circle of Care, which obviously works to help with children who don't have homes in foster care, through children's homes that are available, and then through TEAM Ministries. Those are important works that can only happen because of how we choose to see ourselves as a church and as individuals, as Christians, as managers of what God has entrusted to us. They're important things because we support the whole ministry of the church. That doesn't even touch on what things happen in the ministry of this congregation. Those are ways that we share out beyond ourselves. The work of the church is a part of that ministry. It's part of what God is doing in the world. And we have an amazing privilege to be a part of it, to help be stewards of it, to have and to hold. And to remember that it's really not ours, it's the Lord's, that the Lord has entrusted to us to serve and to oversee. We get to this time of the year where we talk some about stewardship, where we make commitments for how we want to support the ministry and work of the church for the coming year, return of what we have to the Lord through the ministry of the church. As we come to that time, it's always a little embarrassing, honestly, to be in this role of talking about money and asking about how we support it. But if we didn't believe in the ministry of the church, we'd never be able to do it. If we didn't believe in what God has called us to do and to be and to serve, then it would be an impossible task to do. But because we believe in it, and because I know you believe in it, we're able to do that. If you haven't received it in the last day or so, and probably tomorrow if you haven't, you'll receive a letter at home, and it'll in the letter, we'll talk about support for the ministry of the church. There's a sheet that's put there that talks about reasons we give and invites you to read through those. There'll also be a commitment card asking you to make a commitment for how you want to give through the life of the church as a response to what God has entrusted to you. We invite you to fill those out. If you're at home and not coming to participate, you can mail those back in. You can drop them by the church. If you're going to be here, I invite you to, when you come, so that you can, see Steve wearing his OU mask next week. Invite you to come and be here next Sunday. And we'll have a time in the service where we will, as a part of worship, bring those commitments forward. Because it's not just a financial exchange. It's really an act of our faith. And so we want to treat it as such. It's an act of worship. When we contribute in the offering, it's not just that we pay our dues. It's an act of worship. It's a part of what we do in response for what God has done for us. So invite you to do that prayerfully, to think clearly about what you believe God's calling you to do and to help support the ministry of the church. You'll receive those, and I know you will act faithfully because you have, and you will continue to do so. So I want to thank you and to share that and to lift up that opportunity. The car that the lady was driving, trying to drive, it wasn't hers any more than any of the things that we have in our lives are our own. Let us live as those who know that God has entrusted us with what we have and that we're managers and stewards on the Lord's behalf. Amen.